Welcome. My name is Michelle Leisen, and I'm a certified financial planner, a certified divorce financial analyst, and a mediator. I am the founder of two companies. One, I am a financial wealth advisor for Wealth Planning Group, and then I am also a divorce financial professional and mediator at Divorce Smart. A little bit about myself. I went to the University of Minnesota for my undergrad. I went to William Mitchell in St. Paul for law school. I'm not a practicing attorney. I became a financial advisor and still am. So been a financial advisor now since 1998, so 27 years. And a little bit about my why I do what I do, is having gone through my own divorce. You would think, we were together 28 years, and you would think with a legal background and a financial background that I would do all the things right. And that was not the case. It was very tumultuous. It was 3 years, 2 failed mediations. We were one of the unfortunate couples who ended up going to trial. And that I would say is the scariest day of my life, because a judge who has no idea who you are or what you're about is making decisions for your family. It worked out fine, but in that process, I realized that the system could be so much improved. There has to be a better way to do it. So I did some research and found something called a CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation. And really what that is it's all things finance as it relates to divorce. $1 in home equity is not the same as $1 in your bank account and $1 in your retirement plan or 401k. So you have to figure out taxes and all of that good stuff. So along with the CDFA, I also became a licensed mediator through the state of Minnesota Supreme Court. So that allows me to help couples as they divorce through the process. So I'm here today to talk about the legal aspects of divorce, because when it comes to divorce and the uncoupling process, there's essentially 3 components. There's the legal, the financial, and the emotional side of divorce. So when it comes to the legal aspects of divorce, I wish I had known this going in, but essentially there's 4 ways that you can get divorced. There's what's called pro se, meaning do it yourself. You and your spouse go to your county courthouse, you go online and you get the paperwork, you fill out the paperwork, you pay the filing fee, you go there together and you file the paperwork, sign everything, get it notarized. You go before a judge, the judge looks at your paperwork, and you're divorced. Very inexpensive, all you pay is the filing fee, which might be $375, $420, depending on where you are. So it's very quick, very easy. It's good for someone who doesn't have a lot of assets or who doesn't have children. Once you bring children into the mix, or if you have property that you need to contend with, typically pro se is not the best way to go. But it's very inexpensive, very quick, but doesn't provide you with a lot of help. That's the first way. The second way you can potentially get divorced is through what's called mediation, where you would hire a mediator, someone like myself, who guides you through everything. You start with a parenting plan, you look at a balance sheet, you look at what assets you have, you look at cash flow, what potential child support, spousal maintenance, and alimony looks like, and walks you through all of the details of your divorce. Mediation can typically take between 2 to 5 months on average, and it costs you anywhere from, I would say, $5,000 to $10,000. So the mediator can help guide you. You can involve attorneys, but you don't necessarily need to. It's up to you as the individuals. And you're looking at saving time and money and getting some assistance as you go through it. The third way you can potentially get divorced is something called collaborative divorce, where you each hire a collaborative attorney to help guide you through the process. You have a financial neutral, which is someone like myself, who walks you through all the finances, and then you have a child and parenting specialist who will help you with a parenting plan. And it's a formalized process that you agree to stay out of court. So you're saying, yes, we will work this out together. We will decide what the details of our divorce and what the specifics are going to look like. It typically takes a little bit longer than mediation. You're looking at probably anywhere from 6 to 12 months, depending, because you're trying to coordinate schedules with, 2 attorneys, a financial and a parenting specialist. So it typically takes a little bit longer. And cost-wise, you're looking at maybe, $20,000 on average on up, depending on how long and how complicated your situation is. The bad part, I would say, is if you don't end up getting, you don't end up reaching agreements, and you decide you want to go to trial, then the whole thing kind of blows up. You have to have new attorneys and new professionals that help you in the process. But it takes the threat of going to court away. So people really like that they have control and they do it themselves, with the help and guidance of the professionals. The last way, or the fourth way that you could potentially get divorced, is what most people think of, and that's litigation, right? You each hire an attorney to represent you. One of you files for divorce, the other answers, and you work back and forth through your attorney to hopefully reach settlement before you go to trial. Most couples will reach settlement before they do so. Timing wise, you're probably looking at 12 to 36 months on average. It tends to be a lot more expensive than, if you were going to do mediation or potentially collaborative. You're probably looking at a retainer of 10 to 15,000 a piece. And if you go to trial, you're typically looking at, potentially six figures between the two of you. So it can get expensive really quick if you're going through litigation. So it really depends on what you're looking for, time and cost wise, but there are different resources that are available that I wish I knew about as I was going through the process. If you have questions on any of those things, we do consultations where we can help guide you to the right person, depending on your situation, and answer any questions that you may have. So that's the legal side of divorce. There's also the financial side of divorce. And I would say from a financial standpoint, some common questions, I would say probably the most we get as far as questions go are around child support, spousal maintenance, and alimony. So as a part of the financial process, you will build what's called a balance sheet. So you or your professional, your attorney, whoever you end up working with, your CDFA will help you with, or your financial advisor will help you build or put together a balance sheet. What you have as far as assets versus what you owe. And then they will look at potential property division. What, if you keep the house, if one spouse keeps the house, what impact does it have on the other? Versus vice versa, if the other spouse wants to keep it, what does that look like? What happens if you sell the house? So there's a lot of different creative options that you can look at when it comes to what to do with a home, and laying out potential property division as far as who gets what. Is there's things that are considered non-marital in that situation. So from a balance sheet standpoint is typically, from a finance standpoint, what we'll look at first. Then we look at cash flow and budgets, and we say, okay, now that you're potentially going from a household of one to a household of two, what is that going to look like for each of you? Can you afford to do that? Can one of you afford to keep the primary home that you're currently in? And kind of the pros and cons of each, and what do the actual numbers look like? In doing so, we will look at things like child support. Minnesota and Wisconsin has a child support calculator that you could just Google. Child support calculator Wisconsin, child support calculator Minnesota. And you can put in your income, you can put in the number of children you have, the number of overnights each parent would have with the child, and it will tell you what you can expect for child support based upon who's paying, health insurance for the kids and dental insurance and all that good stuff. So I think that is a common question we get around the finances that people ask quite a bit. And then the second is around spousal maintenance and or alimony, depending on what your state calls it. So that typically there's not a calculator for that. It really depends on the situation. It depends upon, one person's ability to pay versus the other person's need, what resources they have. I think it's important to, reach out to an attorney. Obviously, I'm not an attorney and this is not considered legal advice, but reach out to an attorney if you have questions on that. Get a consultation to walk you through, is this a spousal maintenance case? Is this something that alimony would pertain to in our situation? So it really just depends, kind of that common legal answer. But I think those are some important factors to think about from a financial standpoint of your divorce. Can you afford it, what would it look like, and understanding what your numbers are. We are here as resources. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to help. Thank you.